Here we go. First of all, sorry that we were shut out today, so to speak. It would have been a very difficult class, I believe. The smell in the Wake County building was fairly strong, not to mention that they had to shut off one of the heating units. So, for everybody concerned, I think this is best. So this week, we're talking about ethics, and just one of my favorite topics. So this is kind of what we're going to do. We're going to identify social, legal, and economic challenges in the business environment. And we'll look at some legal issues. We'll look at the role of government in social responsibility and how that influences business. We'll look at the impact of ethical practices on business performance. And it kind of describes how people develop their own personal codes of ethics and how those personal codes of ethics will affect business. And then we're going to look at social responsibility from ethics and identify 4 general approaches. And you need to, for this week, read Chapter 2, look at the PowerPoints, and I'm going to show you those. We're going to go through them. We're going to, you need to do the study module, you need to do the simulation, the quiz, and a discussion board. You'll notice there's no video in here. So in the discussion board, all you need to do is read that question for this week, and we're going to go through it on Friday. So before we get going, I want to show you something very quickly. First of all, this is a study guide that I keep going back to. These right here were the terms you needed to look up for last week's class. These are the terms right here that you'll need for this week's class. So make sure you have page numbers for these and find page numbers and explanations for these for Chapter 2. Just wanted to make you aware. I'm going to do this every week so that you know what you need to be looking for that final. And really, before we get started, there are 2 websites I want to show you. First one, this is just plain scary. The richest 62 people in this world control the same amount of wealth as the poorest half of the world's population. This is how some people live. And, you know, half of the world's population is, I forget, they give us a number. I don't know, I don't see here. So half of the world's population is, I believe, about 2 billion people. And those 2 billion people, all put together, hold as much property as the richest 62 people in the world. I have to ask, is that ethical? So that's my first one. And then here, is your cell phone powered by child labor? This is a story about children who go to slag mines and to other mines in third world countries and find cobalt, okay, for lithium ion batteries for cell phones. So, you know, and they don't get paid a lot. They put themselves to great risk because of the dust, and they aren't treated very well. So it's an interesting dilemma we have, is our cell phones are very inexpensive to what they should be, and some of that is because they use child labor to make them. And again, I have to ask, you know, is that ethical? And how much do we, or how responsible are we for some of this? So those 2 web pages you can find, if you really want to check them out, in Session 2 under the agenda. So that's a little bit, there's a lot of dilemmas about our world and our consumerism and our business, and that's kind of what this chapter is all about. So let's look at the PowerPoint. Oops. So let's make that, I guess I can't make it any smaller. I guess we'll just do it as is. So, as again, we're going to look at ethics. What do they mean? How do they apply to environmental issues? What about relationships with customers, employees, and investors? And how we can approach social responsibility, and what is social responsibility? And then some steps that businesses can take to implement social responsible programs. Learning objectives I pretty well went through with you. So just kind of sit back and let's try to figure this out. So we have ethics, and ethics is the belief of what's right or wrong, or good and bad, in actions that affect others. In other words, our actions, the actions we perform, do they harm other people? And how do we feel about that? Is that right or wrong, or is it ethical? Is it right to steal? Is it ethical to be within the law, but still harm somebody else with our legal actions? Questions. Then we have business ethics, and that refers to ethical or unethical behaviors by employees in the context of their jobs. And you really have to look at that also from the context of employers. How does that play out? What is your relationship with the people who work for you? So that brings up these questions right here. Where do these come from? When I'm talking about where do our ethics come from? Where do we get right and wrong? Where do we pull that from? And can we have one set of ethics for home and one for work? Are we the same people in both places as far as our ethics are concerned? Need to think of these as I talk through this. Can ethics be real and everyone have a different set of ethics and it still be right? Because many cultures are different than ours, and many people have different ethics as compared to ours, or what we would call ethics. So, can that be real? Can there ever really be a hard core ethics as we look at it? So think of that as we stroll through these PowerPoints. We have business and managerial ethics, and what that involves is behavior toward employees, behavior toward the organization, and behavior toward other economic agents as you look at it. The employees, it's real obvious. The organization or the business, we always have to ask ourselves, are our actions ethical within the confines of what we do for a job? You know, is it okay to take that pencil home? That's an ethical question. And then behavior toward other economic agents, we're talking about vendors and suppliers and things of that nature. But there's another whole set that needs to be added to this. And that set is the community and other people who are involved or feel the effects of the business. And that's where that social responsibility comes in to play at. They give us a model for ethical judgment making, and it looks so easy here. You know, you gather the information, you analyze the facts, and then you make an ethical decision. But it's not quite that easy. It can't be a flowchart. There's so many ethical dilemmas out there. One of the big questions is the purpose of a business, and should a business only make money and concerned with making money and increasing the stockholders' wealth, or should they also look at what the business does to the community? What if it's polluting the environment? What if they're working the people too long and it's ruining the work-life balance? Those are ethical issues that have to be figured out within the organization, and that comes to company practices and business ethics. You always have to have the core principles, the values. Those have to be unchanging. Now, your organizational objectives, now they may change. I mean, our purpose is, or what we're trying to achieve is going to change. what our strategies and practices are will change and be revised a lot, but they all still have to be guided by these core principles. And most companies do that by having written codes, ethical codes, and by instituting ethics programs. And if it's a very strong ethical company, they will reinforce that program over and over and over again until ethics is the core of that business. So, ethics is a really important part. There's a big argument about it and a lot of debate. We're going to look at it when we get into the discussion board. It's got a really good video that we're going to watch that's really going to ask a good question of you. So you establish the written codes and the ethics program, and then you start looking at social responsibility. Come on, it's stuck. Social responsibility. And social responsibility says, oh, there are more than those three things that we had. There are employees, okay? There are local communities that we have to take into consideration. We have to take our investors into consideration, our suppliers, and our customers. Now, the local communities, or even the investors weren't mentioned in the other, but they were kind of. These two, okay, they all fall within that social responsibility. And these are called organizational stakeholders. Anybody who's affected by that business, be that throughout the process of business or as an outside influence, these are stakeholders, and they should be considered when making decisions. And this kind of shows you how it lays out. And these are a little, this is a framework for you, okay? A little bit. There's a lot more to this. Our customers should be treated fairly and honestly. There are consumer rights, and there needs to be fair pricing when you consider our customers. For our employees, we need to respect their dignity and their basic human needs. We need to treat them fairly and worry about their work-life balance. And we should be concerned with their education and help them get more education. Our investors, we need to use proper accounting procedures and have our reporting be transparent and not hide things from them. We need to be above board and honest. Suppliers, it needs to be mutually beneficial. It's just not all about the business. It has to be not only good for us, but good for our suppliers. And then local communities. We should support local community functions, and we should think about how our business affects the community, not only in a positive manner, but in a negative manner. And we should negate those negative manners as much as we can. And we should promote the concept of accountability. If we did it, we need to fix it. And that's just what it amounts to. There's a very, very big controversy about this social responsibility. And the other thing that we need to be looking at is our responsibility toward the environment, because our business affects the entire world now because of the shape or the condition of the environment. We have air pollution. Think of China and India. Really check out how bad their air pollution is. Many people walk around with surgical masks on their face most of the day in the larger cities. Water pollution. Think about Flint, Michigan right now, and the fact that their water has been polluted and has been polluted for several years as they drank it. And now not only do we have an environmental issue, we have a very serious health issue with young children being contaminated with lead poisoning. And then there's land pollution, and that's a toxic waste dump disposal. A long time ago, you guys weren't born yet, but there was Love Canal. In Love Canal, as they were dumping oil on community roads that were full of toxic waste. Terrible time. And they're still digging up the dirt from that. And finally, we need to do much more recycling. rather than filling up the land in landfills. So there's a responsibility we now have towards the environment that we have to think about. So that brings this up. This is so interesting, there are 4 stances to take on social responsibility. Remember, I said that there was controversy over that. So you have the obstructionist stance, and that involves doing as little as possible and may involve attempts to deny or cover up violations. And there are many companies that do this. There are many movies actually made out of this. There's a defensive stance, which is right here. The company meets only the minimal legal requirements in its commitments to groups and individuals in its social environment. It just does what it has to do. There's the accommodative stance. They'll do it if they're specifically asked to do so, and they will exceed legal minimums in its commitments to groups, but only if they're asked. And finally, there's a proactive stance, and that's a company that actively seeks opportunities to contribute to the well-being of groups and individuals in its social environment. This is where everybody needs to be, right here. We have some serious problems with ethics, we have serious problems with the environment, and we all need to work together to make it happen. And business can do that. So, this brings up, how much does this cost? A lot sometimes, but then sometimes it doesn't have to cost anything. Small businesses have to sit down and really see what they can afford to do. They have to really consider what links they will go to. They may not be able to donate $100,000 to XXX for the community, but they may be able to allow their people to volunteer 1 day a month for the schools or for the library or for Habitat, anything like that. Now, that's not very costly, but it does make a big difference. So that's being socially responsible. It's not just money. The other one we have to look at is the government and how the government folds into social responsibility. A lot of times, if companies do not take up the banner of social responsibility, the government will come in and do regulation. They will establish laws. They will direct in a direct way or an indirect way. They are involved. It is much better if a company takes it upon themselves to be so. So how do organizations influence government? Well, we have what they call political action committees, or PACs. We're seeing those happen right now with the presidential primaries on. Many of the PACs are supporting whichever candidate will be best for their agenda, for the company's agenda. Many companies lobby, which means they use groups and people that go around and represent the organization before political bodies who try to influence their decision on what they will vote on. So the government has a lot of influence. Number one, they can write the regulations, and number two, they themselves can be influenced on what regulations they pass. So very important. Then you have formal organizational dimensions. You can have legal compliance, and the question becomes, just because it's legal, is it ethical? You can have ethical compliance, and that's where you have to sit back and follow really the core basic ethical and legal standards of behavior. And there's philanthropic giving, where many companies give funds and gifts to charities and to other worthy causes, and that happens a lot. So these are ways that we do comply, and we try to be ethical, and we try to be giving to our communities. There's a lot of food for thought. And how do you know? Okay, there's something that is really just becoming very popular, and that's a social audit, which is a systematic analysis of a company's success in using funds earmarked to meeting its social responsibility goals. It means it goes back and they look and say, how much of an impact did we make? Now, here's the key. You don't necessarily have to give funds. You know, you can, your whole company persona can make a big difference in how your employees react. So it's very important to understand that it's not all about money. It's about an attitude. It's about a way of being in the world. And a company can influence that greatly with their employees. So that kind of fairly well covers this chapter. We're going to go on, and we're really going to look at this further when we get into the forum. So thank you for listening. I'll see you Friday.